Well, good afternoon. My name's Jim. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been in the program for actually next week. I'll be celebrating 37 years. And about 8 to 9 years ago, I managed to end up at the Thursday night 12-step in Buddhism meeting over by Lake Calhoun. And I liked what I experienced and what I heard, and I've been a regular there ever since. And so I'm going to give a short talk, and then we're going to break into our small groups and talk about the topic. The topic is, now what do you do after the retreat? How do you keep the spirit of the retreat going? And so for many of us, I think it's critical that we can find a way to more deeply understand and work the program. We have already heard a great many ideas these past couple days, and hopefully everyone's been having a great experience. But the question comes up, how do we continue the spirit and experience of the retreat after we go home? I'm going to offer some thoughts I have on how I basically have been doing the practice in my life. It's not probably the only way to do it, but we can talk more about that in our small groups. So these are just suggestions, like the whole program. And I'd like to explore the maintenance steps of 10, 11, and 12, combined with some of the Buddhist principles in meditation. Step 10 says, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Now, step 10 suggests we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Then if they crop up, we discuss them with someone and make amends quickly if we have harmed someone. I think step 10 goes much deeper than this, though. I once worked in a grocery store, and we would periodically take an inventory. In making the inventory, we found that most of what we found was good. Sure, we found some obsolete and damaged merchandise, which we took care of in an appropriate manner. But again, most of what we found was on the positive side. And so I think it's really important to look at the positive side and all the good things we have in our lives, including our own qualities, and be grateful for those. So I think gratitude is a big quality. In the Miracle of Mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh says that we usually think of a miracle as walking on air or water. But he says the real miracle is not to walk on either water or thin air, but to walk on earth. Every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the curious eyes of a child, or our own two eyes, all is miracle. So I think we should look at all the miracles in our lives that we can be grateful for if we only open our eyes. Sometimes I think a better name for our illness is the more disease. And instead of saying, hi, I'm Jim, I'm an alcoholic, I should say, hey, hi, my name is Jim and I want more. And I know I always wanted more alcohol, and even though that obsession has thankfully been removed, I still find myself wanting more of something. More money, more property, more prestige, power, fame, honor, control, peace, serenity, the list is endless. And sometimes it's framed in the negative, or things that I might have an aversion to. Such as, I want to have less stress, I want to be less poor, I want to have less aggravation. That list is endless too. Or maybe I just want something different. In the discussion of step 10 in the Big Book, it suggests that our function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And to me, effectiveness means to minimize unskillful patterns and behaviors, or to maximize skillful patterns and behaviors. In Jack Kornfield in The Path with Heart says, in dealing with each moment of our experience, we use either skillful, awakened, or unskillful, unconscious means. Unskillful responses such as grasping, aversion, and confusion all inevitably create more suffering and painful karma. Skillful responses based on awareness, love, openness will inevitably lead to well-being and happiness. We must look at ourselves over and over again in order to learn love, to discover what has kept our hearts closed, and to what it means to allow our hearts to open. Paying attention is what my sponsor used to say. Pay attention continuously to whatever is going on in you and around you. And let go of all the resentments, selfishness, self-centeredness, and the 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity that the Big Book talks about. And he also said, let go of old ideas. So I need to ask, what old ideas do I still cling to? And he also used to say that, remember, whatever idea I have today, tomorrow it's going to be an old idea. Not that I necessarily have to let go of it, but I should be prepared to. Step 11 says, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So for prayer, prayer is not a magic formula or an incantation to get what we want. Prayer is an opening of our heart and mind. It is about befriending the mystery of ourselves and of the universe. In the program, we ask for freedom from self-will. As in the third step prayer, relieve me of the bondage of self. A meditation, I'm not going to say a lot about meditation. We've been doing and talking a lot about that the past couple of days. But here are a couple of quotes I like about meditation. And again, these are mostly from Jack Kornfield. Meditation is not a process of getting rid of something, but one of opening and understanding. We learn to see with the heart, which loves, rather than with the mind, which compares and defines. We need less knowing about how life should be and more openness to its mystery. Meditation is training to simply be present. We open ourselves to the pain and pleasures of our life. We just notice whatever comes up without trying to repress anything. And it is not necessary to evaluate, critique, judge the practices, beliefs, or actions chosen by others. Now, step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And as an aside, did you know that the word spirit comes from the Latin word for breath? I found that interesting. Jack Kornfield again says, at first you will think of practice as a limited part of your life. In time you will realize that everything you do is part of your practice. Practice in the 12 steps and in Buddhism is always about progress, not perfection. The everyday practice is simply to develop complete acceptance and openness to all situations, emotions, and people. When I think of step 12, I also think about service. Most commonly, we think of service to be the service structure of our 12-step group or speaking somewhere, but it's also about making coffee, setting up chairs, greeting people, and simply attending and participating in meetings. But we can also bring the spirit of service into our everyday lives. We can be of great service just about anywhere by bringing patience, understanding, forgiveness, generosity. It's another endless list there, just to every situation we encounter. For example, it can be a great act of service, kindness, and generosity to simply yield the right of way to a distracted driver. Spiritual work requires sustained practice and a commitment to look very deeply into ourselves. We must look at ourselves over and over again to learn to love, to discover what has kept our hearts closed, and what it means to allow our hearts to open. The middle way of Buddha is a way not based on aversion to the world, nor on attachment, but a way based on inclusion and compassion. And there again, I think love and tolerance. The middle way rests at the center of all things, the one great seat in the center of the world. On this seat, the Buddha opened his eyes to see clearly and opened his heart to embrace all. This brings to mind the 12-step ideas of letting go, as well again as the idea of love and tolerance is our code. Another principle is openness. We can learn to forgive others, ourselves, and life for its physical pain. We can learn to open our heart to all of it, to the pain and to the pleasures. In this we discover a remarkable truth. Much of spiritual life is self-acceptance, maybe all of it. The big book says willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are essentials of recovery. And acceptance. Acceptance is a big part of my program. And I love the quote from the big book, and acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. I'd like to talk a little bit about an external structure as well. I think that's basically kind of things we do internally. But the culture in which we live generally pushes us to achieve, succeed, compete, be better, want more. In other words, to be dissatisfied with what we have. Most of us, probably all of us, are not monks living in a monastery, so we need to somehow develop our own structure or design for living. As it says in the big book, we are not cured. We have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So I think there's some of the things we can do. First, attend meetings on a regular basis. If you have a problem with the 12-step groups and some of the things they're saying, I suggest study the steps more deeply and strive to understand the 12 traditions. The 12-step groups are not affiliated with any sect, denomination, or organization. So they're really open. I think the founders of AA went to great lengths to try to make the program open to all. And they use the language of their day and probably some limited terms, but I think they really made an effort to open things up. You can also have a home group. That's a good thing to do, where you go on a regular basis. Get a sponsor and be a sponsor. In Minneapolis, St. Paul area, we're really lucky. We have 3 12-step in Buddhism meetings in the area, which are also very good to attend. I think meditation daily, prayer often. I think we need to be intentional about these. And make the prayer your own. Like, for example, if you don't like the 3rd step prayer, revise it a little. Change it to say, "May I be free of the bondage of self." There's also a lot of online resources that can be had. The Clouds and Water website would be a great place to start. Another thought is to turn to page 86 and 87 of the Big Book and use that as a guide for developing your own daily practice. Daily reflections or other daily readings. You could start your own collection of favorite quotes, prayers, or inspirations. Pay attention and act intentionally as much as possible. And always remember it's about progress rather than perfection. Actively practice these principles in your daily life. Practice acceptance, patience, loving kindness, compassion, joy, gratitude. That list is endless too. And make sure to be intentional about it. So to summarize, there's a path that leads to suffering, and there's the path that leads to well-being. I believe that when we understand both paths by looking deeply, we will choose to practice the path that leads to well-being. Chapter 5 of the Big Book says we should grow along spiritual lines. That is about learning what is helpful and what is harmful. It's about having the courage to look deeply at ourselves and the world around us. It's about letting go of fear and self-centeredness and opening ourselves to the gifts of the universe. And it's about giving back all we have received to the world around us. And as I said before, I'm sure there are many other approaches of weaving together the 12-step program and Buddhist principles. And I'm sure you all have your own insights to these 2 great paths, because I've heard many of them throughout the weekend. And I think that's about all I have right now. Thank you.
So the next 45 minutes are going to be a little bit different. We're going to break up